My name is Josephine, and if you had told me, sitting on the edge of my bed that night, that a single page in a dusty diary would define the next 6 years of my existence, I would have believed you, because I meant every word I wrote. I am from the southwestern part of Nigeria, Ogun State. It's the kind of place that doesn't scream for attention, but it holds you firm. We weren't Lagos. We weren't the frantic, never-sleeping heartbeat of the country. We were the steady pulse, the place where the red earth stains your shoes during the rainy season and the air smells like wet leaves and frying akara in the morning. My family sat comfortably in the middle. Not the kind of wealth where the lights never flicker and the generator is silent because you don't even need NEPA. And certainly not the kind of struggle where you count the cups of rice left in the bag. We were okay. And in Nigeria, to be truly okay, to have a roof your father built with his own hands, to have good food that doesn't just fill the stomach, but tastes like home, to wear a clean uniform to a good school, that is a profound kind of blessing. I am the second child of 4, the middle of the pack, the one who watches. My father is a man of quiet pride. He doesn't shout his accomplishments, he builds them. He built the house we lived in, brick by brick, plan by plan. And when I passed my JAMB examination at age 19, when I cleared that cutoff mark and saw the word admitted next to the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University for chemistry, I saw a look in his eyes I hadn't quite seen before. It wasn't just happiness, it was validation. He sat me down and said, "Josephine, you have done well. You go to OAW, you bring out a good grade. I have people, I have connections at the Dangote refinery. Do this thing right, and I will handle the rest." That was the key he handed me. The key to a life where the hustle ends early. A life of stability. A life where the middle class becomes the upper middle class. All I had to do was not break the key in the lock. The night before I left for campus, the house was quiet. My bags were packed, the big, steady traveling bags my father had bought specifically for this journey, sitting like loyal sentinels by the door. They were a silent promise of his investment in my future. The ceiling fan whirred in that specific off-balance rhythm that I knew so well. I could sleep through a thunderstorm, but would wake up the second that fan stopped moving. I sat on my bed. The mattress was firm. The room was dim, only lit by the rechargeable lamp because NEPA, as usual, had done what NEPA does best. I pulled out my diary. It wasn't a fancy leather journal. It was one of those notebooks you buy at the market with a cheap lock that any hairpin could open in 3 seconds. But to me, those pages were sacred. I didn't write a plan. I didn't write a to-do list. I wrote a prophecy. I held the pen, a black beak, slightly chewed at the end, and I pressed it hard into the paper. I wanted the words to leave an impression on the pages underneath. I wanted it to be permanent. I wrote, "Throughout my university years, I will not have a boyfriend nor have sex. I will focus on my studies and ensure I come out with good grades." I paused. Even as the ink dried, a small, pragmatic voice in the back of my head whispered, the no sex part, let's be honest, that might be a battle. You see, I wasn't naive. I wasn't a wide-eyed virgin writing a fairy tale. I knew my body. I knew my urges. But I told myself that part was negotiable as long as the boyfriend part remained intact. I could manage the body. I had to protect the heart. Then I wrote the finish line, the ultimate goal. After graduation, at age 25, I will meet my husband, the one God has ordained to be my crown. And at age 26, I will be married and start my own family. I closed the diary. I clicked the chip lock shut, and I tucked it into the side pocket of my bag. That night, I didn't just pack clothes and books. I packed a timeline for my life. I was 19. I was going from teenage girl to adolescent woman. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought the ink in that diary was a contract signed with the universe. I was wrong. That ink was just the first stroke of a pen in a story I wasn't ready to write. Obafemi Awolowo University is a beautiful campus. If you have never been, let me paint a picture. The roads are lined with tall, ancient trees that create a canopy so thick the sun has to fight to touch the ground. The buildings have this old, stoic dignity about them. And the students, we moved like ants, always rushing, always carrying files and lab coats, always looking like we were on the verge of either a breakthrough or a breakdown. I was a chemistry student. Let me tell you something about studying chemistry in a Nigerian federal university. It is not for the faint of heart. You are not just learning about molecules and reactions. You are learning patience. You are learning how to pray without ceasing when the reagent you spent 3 hours preparing turns the wrong color. You are learning how to beg a lab technician who has seen it all and has the emotional range of a concrete wall. But amidst the titration and the sleepless nights, there was the other chemistry, the human kind. Now, I had made a promise, a prophecy written in ink. No boyfriend, no sex. The no boyfriend part, I handled that like a pro. OAU boys are persistent. They will meet you at the Faculty of Science car park. They will offer to carry your lab coat. They will send you friend requests on Facebook with a message that says, "I saw you at SUB and the Holy Spirit said I should say hi." The Holy Spirit must have been working overtime because he told about 15 different guys to say hi to me in my first semester. I smiled. I was polite, but I kept my distance. I watched my friends fall and in and out of love, crying over heartbreak in hostel rooms, while I sat on my bed, eating Indomie and reviewing my organic chemistry notes. I felt powerful. I felt untouchable. But the body? The body is a different kind of chemistry. You see, I wasn't a virgin when I wrote that diary entry. And let me tell you something they don't teach you in Sunday school. Once you have tasted that particular fruit, the tree doesn't stop looking appealing just because you decided to go on a diet. The urge would come, usually late at night, usually when I was stressed from studying. It would start as a restlessness in my legs, a heat that had nothing to do with the Hamatan sun. And I would ask myself, Josephine, what exactly did you write in that diary? I wrote, no boyfriend. I did not write, become a nun. See the loophole? I saw it too. I saw it clearly with the same clarity I saw the periodic table in my sleep. So, I made a rule for myself, a survival strategy. I could have sex, but there were conditions. Strict, laboratory-grade conditions. Condition 1. The guy could not be from my department. I did not want to be sitting in physical chemistry lecture trying to understand thermodynamics while the man who saw me naked 3 nights ago was breathing down my neck 2 rows behind me. Condition 2. He had to be a stranger or a very distant acquaintance, someone I met at a party, someone I met on a night out in town, someone whose name I might not even remember correctly the next morning. Was it Tunde or Tunji? It starts with T. That's enough. And this was the most important one. After the act, communication must die immediately. No good morning texts, no I had a great time messages, no follow-up. If he called, I screened. If he texted, I replied with 1 word until he got the message. I became a ghost, a very satisfied ghost. And let me tell you, this system worked. There was the guy I met at a house party in Elife. The music was loud. Wizkid, of course, because it was that era. We danced, he bought me a drink, we went back to his off-campus room. The room had posters of football players on the wall and a mattress on the floor. It was not romantic, it was not soft, it was efficient. And in the morning, before the sun fully arose, I slipped out like a secret agent. He texted me 3 times. I replied with, okay, he got the message. There was another one, a final year student from another faculty. I met him at a nightclub. He was fine, let me not lie. The kind of fine that makes you forget your own registration number. The kind of fine that makes you forget your own name for a second. He had this smile that was both sweet and dangerous, like honey with a shot of cheap gin. That night was memorable, very memorable. The kind of night where you look at the ceiling and think, God, if this is a sin, why did you make it feel like worship? But the next day, my phone remained silent, my heart remained locked. I had kept the promise, no boyfriend, no feelings, just release. It was a double life. By day, I was a serious chemistry student, lab coat buttoned up, eyes on the burette, calculating molarity with precision. By night, I was something else. Someone else. A version of Josephine who existed only in the dark and disappeared by dawn. And you know what? It helped me. I know that sounds strange, but it did. I wasn't distracted by relationship drama. I wasn't crying over some boy who didn't text me back. I had taken care of my physical needs and then returned to my primary mission. That second-class upper degree my father had banked his connections on. When graduation day came and I looked at my result, second-class upper, Division 1, I felt a surge of pride that was almost spiritual. I had done it. I had navigated the minefield of university life without losing myself to a man. My heart was intact, my body had been entertained, and my grades were solid. My father was so proud. The day I showed him my result, he made that phone call again, the one to his contact at Dangote Refinery. I could hear his smile in his voice through the wall. My daughter has done well, she is ready. But before the refinery job, there was the small matter of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC. 1 year of serving the fatherland, 1 year of wearing that khaki uniform and shouting, "Coppers, wah!" Now, let me clarify the math for you because this is where the timeline gets serious. I entered OAU at 19. Chemistry in a Nigerian federal university is a 4-year course on paper. But if you know, you know. Between ASU strikes, departmental delays, and the general Nigeria happens factor, 4 years can stretch. I finished at 24. 24 years old, a fresh graduate holding a second-class upper and a prophecy that was running out of runway. I packed my bags again. This time, I was going to a new state, a new adventure. Before I left, I pulled out that old diary. The lock was even looser now. The pages had yellowed slightly at the edges, but the words were still there, staring back at me like a contract I had signed in blood. Age 25, meet the husband, the one God has ordained to be my crown. Age 26, married, start my own family. I was 24. I had 1 year left on the clock, 1 NYSC year. I remember running my finger over the ink and feeling a strange sensation in my chest. Not fear exactly, more like anticipation mixed with pressure. The kind of pressure you feel when you know the exam is next week and you haven't opened the textbook. Except this exam was my entire future, and the textbook was life itself. I closed the diary. I smiled. I thought to myself, Josephine, you have handled university. You handled men without catching feelings. You graduated with good grades. 1 year of NYSC will be easy. You will serve, you will collect your certificate, and somewhere in this year, at exactly the right time, God will bring the man. I zipped up my bag, the same sturdy traveling bag my father had bought me years ago. It had been through OAU with me, now it was headed to a new state. What could possibly go wrong in 1 year of NYSC? NYSC posted me to Rivers State. Now, if you have never been to Port Harcourt, let me describe it for you. Port Harcourt is not Lagos. Lagos is chaos with a rhythm, a loud, beautiful madness that somehow makes sense to the people living in it. Port Harcourt is different. It is oil money and swagger. It is air that smells faintly of crude and opportunity. It is a city that knows it has something the whole country wants, and it walks with its chest puffed out because of it. I arrived with my khaki uniform folded neatly in my bag and my prophecy tucked neatly in my hat. I was 24. The clock was ticking. The orientation camp was exactly what you would expect. 3 weeks of waking up at 4:30 a.m. to the sound of a bugle that sounded like a dying goat. 3 weeks of marching under the sun while a soldier screamed at you to raise your left leg higher, Kopsa. Are you dancing or marching? 3 weeks of eating food that made you question whether the cook had ever actually tasted food before. But orientation camp is also where friendships are forged. There is something about shared suffering that bonds people. You meet someone in the queue for beans, and within 5 minutes, you are exchanging life stories like you have known each other since primary school. That was how I met Margaret. Margaret walked into my dormitory on the second day of camp, carrying a bag that was clearly more expensive than everything I owned combined. And she had this energy about her, the kind of energy that says, I have been through things, but I am still here and I look good doing it. She was born in Port Harcourt, an indigene of River State, but there was nothing local about her accent. She spoke with that polished international school lilt that makes you sit up straighter without realizing it. We became roommates, and within the first week, we became friends. Real friends. The kind of friends who share their last pure water sachet without thinking twice. One night, after lights out, we were lying on our bunks, talking in whispers. The kind of conversation that only happens in the dark, when you can't see the other person's face, and somehow that makes it easier to tell the truth. So, what's your story? I asked her. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, a small, private laugh. My story, she said, has a billionaire uncle. I turned on my side to face her, even though I couldn't see anything in the darkness. Excuse me? Uncle Benson, she said, my mother's brother. He made his money in oil, real estate, hospitality. He has a hotel here in Port Harcourt, 5 stars. The kind of place where the toilet seats are heated and the towels smell like a spa. Okay, I said slowly. And this uncle, is he in your life? My mother put me through secondary school, she said. He paid for my university. He said to me once, Margaret, education is the only thing nobody can take from you. Not the government, not a bad husband, nobody. So he invested in mine. I felt a pang of something, not jealousy, more like admiration mixed with curiosity. I had a father who built a house and promised me a job at Dangote. Margaret had an uncle who owned a 5-star hotel. We were both blessed, just in different fonts. When orientation camp ended, we were posted to the same place of primary assignment, a secondary school on the outskirts of the city. And Margaret, being Margaret, made a suggestion that would change the entire trajectory of my NYSC year. On weekends, she said, I work at Uncle Benson's hotel. At the bar. Good tips, good environment, safe. You should come with me. Extra money never hurt anybody. She was right. Extra money never hurt anybody. So that became our routine. Monday to Friday, we taught chemistry and English to teenagers who looked at us like we were ancient elders, even though we were only a few years older than them. And on Sunday and Sunday nights, we transformed into something else. We became the girls behind the bar at one of the nicest hotels in Port Harcourt. The hotel was beautiful. Let me describe it properly, because this place deserves its own paragraph.
The lobby had marble floors, so shiny you could see your reflection in them. The chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks. The air conditioning was always at that perfect temperature, not too cold to make you shiver, but cool enough to make you forget that outside, Port Harcourt was sweating under the Niger Delta humidity. The bar was on the ground floor, near the restaurant. It was all dark wood and soft lighting, the kind of lighting that makes everyone look like a slightly better version of themselves. Margaret and I would stand behind that counter, mixing drinks we had learned to make by watching YouTube videos, smiling at guests who had more money in their pockets than I would see in a year of NYSC allowance. Most of the guests were businessmen, oil executives, politicians, people who ordered bottles of champagne the way I ordered pure water. They would sit in the plush chairs, speaking in low voices about deals and contracts, while Margaret and I moved around them like ghosts, present but invisible. It was on a Saturday night, one of those nights where the bar was busy but not chaotic. The music was playing at that perfect volume where you could hear the beat but still hold a conversation. Margaret was wiping down glasses with a white cloth. I was restocking the small fridge with mixers. The doors opened. 3 men walked in and 1 woman. I noticed them immediately because they were speaking Yoruba. In the heart of Port Harcourt, where pidgin and Ikwere filled the air, the sound of my mother tongue hit my ears like the first chord of a familiar song. "Epaleo," I said, greeting them with a smile. "Ekabo." The 3 men stopped. Their faces lit up like I had just handed them a gift. "Ah!" one of them exclaimed. His name, I would later learn, was Femi. "Yoruba! You are Yoruba! See this small girl speaking our language in the middle of PH." I laughed. "I am not a small girl, oh. I am a full-grown woman." "That is what small girls always say," Femi replied, grinning. He was handsome, let me not lie. He had that Lagos boy charm, the kind of confidence that comes from growing up knowing how to talk to women, how to make them laugh, how to make them feel seen. His shirt was expensive. His watch was expensive. His smile was dangerous. The second man was quieter, KB. He was looking at Margaret the way a man looks at a painting he's considering buying. Not rude, just assessing. Margaret caught his gaze and held it. She didn't smile, she just raised one eyebrow as if to say, "I see you. What are you going to do about it?" The third man was Farouk. He was the one who had brought the woman, a Rivers girl from the look of her. She was beautiful, with cheekbones that could cut glass and a quietness that suggested she was either very shy or very calculating. I never found out which. They ordered drinks, I made them. Femi kept talking to me, asking questions. Where was I from in Yoruba land? What was I studying? How long had I been in Port Harcourt? He had that way of making small talk feel like a secret conversation, like you were the only 2 people in the room even though the bar was full. When they got up to leave, Femi turned back. "Let me get your number," he said. It wasn't a question, and I gave it to him. I don't know why I gave it to him. Looking back now, I have asked myself that question 1,000 times. Was it the charm, the Lagos boy confidence, the fact that he made me laugh in a city where I was still a stranger? Or was it simply that old familiar restlessness, the same one I felt back in OAU, the one that made me seek out warm bodies in the dark? I wrote my number on a napkin and handed it to him. He smiled. "I will call you." And he did. Femi called on a Friday, exactly 1 week after that night at the hotel bar. My phone buzzed while I was lying on my bed in the Copper's Lodge, staring at the ceiling and wondering if the ceiling fan was going to fall on my head one day. The way it wobbled, it was only a matter of time. "Josephine, it's Femi." His voice was smooth, too smooth, the kind of smooth that makes you want to roll your eyes and smile at the same time. "There's a bar in Jari. Nice place, good music. I want you to come. Bring your friend, the quiet one with the attitude. KB wants to see her." I looked over at Margaret.
She was sitting on her own bed, painting her toenails a shade of red that looked like it cost more than my entire makeup collection. She caught my eye and raised an eyebrow. Femi wants us to meet them tonight, I said, covering the phone with my hand. KB wants to see you. Margaret didn't even look up from her toes. Tell them we'll come. I uncovered the phone. We'll come. That night, we dressed like we were going to war. Because in a way, we were. The war between what you want in the moment and what you know you should want for your future. Margaret wore a black dress that hugged her body like it was custom made, which it probably was. I wore something red. Red is my color. It says, I am here. Notice me, but don't touch unless I say so. The bar was in GRA, Government Reserved Area, the nice part of Port Harcourt, the part where the roads are smooth and the generators are silent because the electricity actually works. We walked in and the air conditioning hit us like a blessing.
Femi and KB were already there, seated in a corner booth, drinks on the table. Femi stood up when he saw me and spread his arms wide like he was welcoming me home. "Ah, my Yoruba sister, you came," he exclaimed. KB nodded at Margaret. She nodded back. It was like watching two chess players acknowledge each other before the game begins. We sat, we drank, we laughed. I will give Femi this much. He was fun. He told stories about growing up in Lagos, about the trouble he got into in university, about the time he accidentally insulted a chief at a wedding and had to prostrate for 10 minutes to apologize. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt. And laughing, when you are 24 and carrying the weight of a prophecy on your shoulders, feels like a release valve. Margaret and KB were in their own world. They were talking in low voices, their heads close together. I caught snippets, something about Port Harcourt, something about oil and gas, something that made Margaret throw her head back and laugh in a way I had never heard her laugh before. The night blurred, more drinks, more laughter. At some point, Femi's hand found my knee under the table. I didn't move it. I want to pause here and say something important. I knew Femi was married. Margaret and I had done our research after the first meeting. A few discreet questions, a few social media searches. Femi had a wife, 2 kids, a boy and a girl, judging by the family photos he posted on Instagram. KB was married too. Farouk, the quiet one, was married with a child on the way. I knew, and I still stayed. I'm not telling you this because I am proud of it. I'm telling you this because this story is about the truth, and the truth is not always clean. The truth is sometimes messy and complicated and full of choices that you make in the moment, knowing fully well that they will haunt you later. That night, Margaret went home with KB and I went home with Femi. The details of that night are not important. What is important is how I felt the next morning. I woke up in a hotel room, not Uncle Benson's hotel, a different one, smaller, but still nice. And Femi was sleeping beside me. The sheets were tangled, the air conditioner hummed quietly. I looked at his face. He was handsome, yes, but there was no spark, no connection, no fling, just the hollow satisfaction of a physical need met and nothing more. I slipped out of the bed. I gathered my clothes. I left before he woke up. This was my system. This was what I did. Meet, connect, release, disappear. It had worked in OAU. It would work here. Except this time, it didn't. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of teaching chemistry to teenagers who didn't care about the periodic table. 3 weeks of weekend shifts at Uncle Benson's hotel bar. 3 weeks of Margaret and I dissecting our night with Femi and KB like it was a case study. "Are you going to see him again?" Margaret asked me one evening. I shrugged. He hasn't called, and I haven't called.
That's how it works. Margaret nodded slowly. KB called me twice. And nothing. He's married. I'm not about that life. One night was fun, but I'm not signing up to be anybody's side chick. I admired Margaret at that moment. She had a clarity that I lacked. She knew what she wanted and what she didn't want, and she didn't apologize for either. As for me, I was starting to feel unsettled. It began with a dream. The first dream came about 3 months before the night with Femi. I didn't think much of it at the time. Dreams are just dreams, right? Random firings of the brain. Nothing spiritual, nothing prophetic. But then it came again and again. The dream was always the same. I was standing in a church, not a big cathedral, just a simple church with white walls and wooden pews. I was wearing a wedding dress, white, lace, beautiful in that simple, elegant way. And beside me, standing at the altar, was a man. I could never see his face clearly in the beginning. He was like a figure in the mist, there, but not there. I knew he was tall. I knew he had broad shoulders. I knew he had a calmness about him, a steadiness that made me feel safe even in the dream. But as the weeks passed, the dreams became sharper, clearer. One night, I saw his face. He had kind eyes, deep brown like roasted coffee beans, a strong jaw, a smile that was gentle but not weak. He looked at me like you look at something precious, something you have waited a long time for. In the dream, he reached for my hand, and when our fingers touched, I felt something I had never felt in real life. Not with the OAU boys, not with Femi, not with anyone. I felt home. I woke up with tears on my face. I told Margaret about the dreams one morning. She listened quietly, stirring her tea. "Do you know him?" she asked. "No, I've never seen him before in my life." Margaret was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Josephine, in my culture, we take dreams seriously. If you keep seeing the same face, the same man, the same wedding, that is not just a dream, that is a message." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "A message from who?" Margaret looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. "The call came from KB. "Margaret," he said, "I want to take you out. Lunch. Just something small. You can bring your friend if you want." Margaret looked at me. I nodded. We met them at a restaurant near the hotel. Not the bar this time. A proper restaurant with white tablecloths and waiters who spoke with fake Italian accents. When we walked in, I saw KB sitting at a table. Beside him was Farouk. And beside Farouk was a man I had never seen before. He was tall, broad shoulders, kind eyes the color of roasted coffee beans. The room tilted. I stopped walking. My feet literally refused to move. Margaret bumped into me from behind. "Josephine, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. It was him, the man from my dreams. He was sitting there at a table in a restaurant in Port Harcourt, holding a menu and looking completely unaware that he had just shattered my entire understanding of reality. KB stood up and gestured. "Ah, you made it. Ladies, this is Joseph. He's a friend. Joseph, this is Margaret and her friend, Josephine." I whispered. Joseph looked up at me, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition? Attraction? Or just polite curiosity?
He smiled. Joseph and Josephine. That's funny. It wasn't funny. It was fate. I sat down across from him. My hands were shaking under the table. I pressed them against my thighs to steady them. I watched him throughout the meal. The way he spoke, the way he listened, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't looking. He was trying to figure me out, trying to understand who I belonged to. Was I with Farouk? Was I with KB? Was I available? And then Farouk's phone rang. He answered it. Femi, yes, they are here. He listened for a moment, then laughed. He held the phone out to me. Your boyfriend wants to talk to you. The world stopped. I saw it happen in slow motion. Joseph's face changed. The warmth drained out of it. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His eyes, which had been soft and curious, turned distant, guarded. He had heard the word boyfriend. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Farouk's phone and throw it across the restaurant. I wanted to explain that Femi was not my boyfriend, that he was a mistake, a warm body in the dark, a bad decision that I made because I was lonely and restless and too weak to keep my own promise to myself. But I couldn't say any of that because Joseph didn't know me. We had just met. And if I started explaining, I would sound insane. So I did the only thing I could do. I laughed, a fake, hollow, brittle laugh. Your boyfriend, I said to Farouk, loud enough for Joseph to hear. Femi is not my boyfriend, oh. He's just a friend, a very distant friend. I took the phone. I put it to my ear. Hello? Femi's voice came through, smooth as ever. Josephine, how is the food? Are you having fun? Tell KB I said he should order the steak. It's good there. I'm fine, I said. My voice was flat. I have to go. I handed the phone back to Farouk without waiting for a response. But it was too late. Joseph had heard the word boyfriend. And even though I had denied it, the damage was done. I could see it in his posture. The way he suddenly became interested in his menu, the way he stopped looking at me. I had spent 4 years in university protecting my heart from the wrong men. I had kept my promise. No boyfriend, no serious relationships. And now, the one man I was supposed to meet, the man from my dreams, the one God had ordained to be my crown, he was sitting 3 feet away from me, and I had already ruined it before we even spoke a real word to each other. Because of Femi, because of one night, because I couldn't wait. I did not sleep that night. I lay on my bed in the copper's lodge, staring at the same wobbling ceiling fan, watching it spin in its endless, useless circles. It felt like a metaphor for my life, moving, spinning, going nowhere. Margaret was asleep in the bed next to mine. Her breathing was slow and even. She had asked me on the ride back to the lodge what was wrong. I had said nothing. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. But Margaret was not stupid. She had seen the way I looked at Joseph. She had seen the way my face crumbled when Farouk handed me that phone. She didn't push. She just squeezed my hand once and said, "We'll talk tomorrow." Tomorrow came, and I still didn't have the words. I replayed the scene in my head like a broken Nollywood DVD. Joseph's face, the warmth in his eyes when he first looked at me, the way that warmth cuddled into something cold and distant the moment Farouk said the word boyfriend. I had spent years perfecting the art of detachment. I had slept with men and walked away without a backward glance. I had built walls around my heart so high and so thick that no OAU boy, no Femi, No random party hookup could ever scale them. And now, the one man I actually wanted to let in had seen the gate, and it was covered in the fingerprints of someone else. I pulled out my diary. The lock was completely broken now. It hung uselessly from the side, a relic of a time when I believed I could control my own story with ink and intention. I flipped to the page, the one with the prophecy. Age 25, meet the husband, the one God has ordained to be my crown. Age 26, married, start my own family. I had met him. I had literally sat across a table from the man in my dreams, and I had watched him slip through my fingers because of a choice I made 3 weeks before I even knew he existed. Was this punishment? Was this the universe balancing the scales? I had kept the letter of my prophecy, no boyfriend, but I had violated its spirit 100 times over with strangers in dark rooms. I had treated my body like a rental property and my heart like a vault. And now, when I finally wanted to open the vault, the combination wouldn't work? Or was this a test? I thought about the stories my grandmother used to tell me. Stories from the old days. Stories about destiny and timing. She used to say, what is yours will never pass you by, but sometimes it will walk past you just to see if you will stand up and follow. Joseph had walked past me, or rather, he had walked away from me. But was he gone forever? I didn't have his number. I didn't even know his full name. Joseph, just Joseph. The same name as my own, flipped to its masculine form. Was that a sign or just a coincidence? At this point, I was so desperate for meaning that I would have seen a sign in the pattern of the rust on the ceiling fan. A month. That was all I had left. 1 month until I passed out from NYSC. 1 month until I packed my bags and returned to Ogun State. 1 month until the door to Port Harcourt and to Joseph closed forever. I made a decision that night. I would find him. I didn't know how. I didn't even know if it was wise. I didn't know if a woman chasing a man was the kind of thing a good Yoruba girl was supposed to do. But I knew that if I left Port Harcourt without at least trying, I would spend the rest of my life wondering. The next day, I called Margaret into a conference. We sat on her bed, legs crossed, facing each other like we were about to broker a peace treaty. I need to find Joseph, I said. Margaret didn't blink. I know. I don't have his number. I don't know his full name. I don't even know what he does for a living. All I know is that he's friends with KB and Farouk. Margaret nodded slowly. And Femi. The name hit me like a slap. Femi. The man who had called at the exact wrong moment. The man whose name had been attached to mine in Joseph's ears. I can ask KB, Margaret said carefully. But Josephine, if I ask KB about Joseph, he's going to ask why. And he's going to tell Femi. And Femi is going to have questions. I knew she was right. The web was tangled. Every thread connected to another. Asking about Joseph meant reopening the door to Femi. It meant explaining myself. It meant vulnerability. Let me think about it, I said. A week passed, then 2. I didn't ask Margaret to call KB. I didn't try to find Joseph. I told myself I was being strategic. I was waiting for the right moment. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I was afraid. Afraid of what Joseph would think if he knew the full truth about me and Femi. Afraid that even if I found him, he would look at me the way he looked at me in the restaurant, with distance, with disappointment, with the quiet judgment of a man who thought I belonged to someone else. Afraid that my prophecy was real and I had broken it beyond repair.
the dreams stopped. That was the cruelest part. For months, I had dreamt of Joseph almost every night. The wedding, the family, the feeling of home. And now, after meeting him in the flesh, the dreams vanished. It was as if the universe had shown me a glimpse of what could be and then slammed the door shut. You had your chance, the silence seemed to say. You wasted it. On my last weekend in Port Harcourt, Margaret and I went to Uncle Benson's hotel one final time. We stood behind the bar, mixing drinks, smiling at guests, doing the same routine we had done for almost a year. But everything felt different, heavy, final. During a quiet moment, Margaret turned to me. "You know," she said, wiping a glass with a cloth, "my grandmother used to say something about destiny." I smiled weakly. Your grandmother and my grandmother should start a podcast. Margaret laughed. Then her face grew serious. She said, "Destiny is not a straight road. It's a river. It bends. It curves. Sometimes it disappears underground and you think it's gone forever. But it's not gone. It's just moving beneath the surface, waiting to break through again." I looked at her. "Do you really believe that?" Margaret set the glass down and looked me dead in the eyes. "I believe," she said, "that if Joseph is truly yours, nothing you did with Femi can change that. And if he's not yours, nothing you could have done would have made him stay. The question isn't whether the prophecy is broken. The question is whether you trust it enough to let it play out." I didn't have an answer. The next day, I packed my bags, the same sturdy traveling bag my father had bought me years ago. It had been through OAU with me, through NYSC, through joy and regret and everything in between. I zipped it up and looked around the small room that had been my home for almost a year. Margaret was waiting by the door. "So," she said, "this is it. This is it." We hugged, a long, tight hug that said everything we couldn't say out loud. Then I picked up my bag and walked out. As the bus pulled out of Port Harcourt, I watched the city shrink in the window. The oil tanks, the flyovers, the hotel where I had met Femi, the restaurant where I had seen Joseph's face for the first time in waking life. I pulled out my diary. The prophecy page was still there. The ink was faded now, but the words were still legible. Age 25, meets the husband. Age 26, married. I was 25. I had met him and I had let him go. Or had I? I closed the diary and looked out the window at the road stretching ahead of me. The future was a blank page. The past was ink that had already dried. And somewhere out there, in the sprawling chaos of Nigeria, Joseph was living his life. Maybe thinking of me, maybe not. Maybe wondering who I really was, maybe not. I didn't know if our story was over. I didn't know if the prophecy was dead or just delayed. I didn't know if I would ever see him again. But I did know one thing. That diary was still in my bag. And as long as I carried it, the story wasn't finished.